Thunder. Ancestral Talisman? The deafening noise that had been reverberating in Lin Dong's ears suddenly vanished as if it had been completely wiped away. Only those 4 words remained, rolling like thunder in his mind. It was as though a tremendous explosion was echoing in his head, making his scalp tingle. Lin Dong's gaze, somewhat unfocused, rested on the silver tower in Tang Dongling's delicate hand on the auction stage. He had never imagined that after years of searching for the ancestral talisman, he would sense it here. The strange ripple emanating from the silver tower was something no one else might notice, but to Lin Dong, who possessed the devouring ancestral talisman, it was like an electric shock. That ripple, it was unmistakable. No force in the world could mimic such an aura. Lin Dong's pupils, narrowed to the size of pinpoints, remained locked onto the small silver tower. Only after a long while did the tidal wave of shock within him begin to subside, and the once vanished noise of the auction house surged back into his ears, pulling him from his dazed state. Gulp. Lin Dong swallowed hard, his sweat-soaked palms resting on his thighs as he gently wiped them. He then asked quietly in his heart, "Are my senses correct?" "Even if your senses failed, the reaction from the devouring ancestral talisman inside you wouldn't be wrong," Yen responded. "The ripple hidden within that silver tower indeed belongs to the Thunder Ancestral Talisman." With that confirmation, a smile tugged at Lin Dong's lips. He let out a long breath. After so many years of searching, he had finally found a clue. "I think the location of the second ancestral talisman you know of might be related to this silver tower and the Thunder Ancestral Talisman," Yin mused after a moment of silence. Lin Dong nodded slightly, feeling the same. Across the vast world, there were only 8 ancestral talismans. Apart from his own devouring ancestral talisman, he knew of the darkness ancestral talisman in the possession of the Dark Palace Master, as well as the flame ancestral talisman held by Mo Luo in the Chaos Demon Sea. And now, this clue likely pointed to the 4th ancestral talisman, the Thunder Ancestral Talisman. Since this lead appeared in the Chaos Demon Sea, it was highly probable that the Thunder Ancestral Talisman was hidden somewhere in this region. This matched the map Lin Dong had obtained, making it very likely they referred to the same ancestral talisman. Fortunately, only those who possess an ancestral talisman can sense this kind of ripple. Otherwise, if word of this spread, the entire Chaos Demon Sea would erupt into chaos, Yin remarked. Lin Dong nodded. If the Celestial Merchant Pavilion knew that this silver tower was related to the Thunder Ancestral Talisman, they would go to any lengths to keep it secret. They would search for the talisman themselves and acquire it. Everyone knew the immense power of an ancestral talisman. If the Celestial Merchant Pavilion obtained the Thunder Ancestral Talisman, they would undoubtedly rise to become one of the top powers in the Chaos Demon Sea. Just like Mo Luo, who wielded the Flame Ancestral Talisman, who in the entire Chaos Demon Sea, even among the super-powerful experts who had reached the Revolution stage, would dare challenge him? A Revolution stage expert with an ancestral talisman was a formidable opponent, even for those who had stepped into the reincarnation stage. But even so, it's going to be incredibly difficult to obtain this silver tower, Lin Dong frowned. Judging by the looks of the major powers in front of him, this silver tower was clearly the target they had been waiting for. Though they didn't know its connection to the Thunder Ancestral Talisman, the fact that it was left behind by a powerful expert from the reincarnation stage was enough to make them flock to it. For Lin Dong to seize the silver tower from these wealthy and powerful people would be no easy task. It's indeed very difficult, Yin agreed. After all, Lin Dong hadn't yet reached the level where he could intimidate all the experts here. He would have to fight for the silver tower through normal means. But given his current resources, he clearly didn't have the qualifications to contend with them. Lin Dong pressed his lips together, a sharp glint flashing through his dark eyes. He had poured his heart and soul into finding the second ancestral talisman. Now that he had a clue, there was no way he would let it slip away. No matter what, he had to get that silver tower. Just as that determined look crossed Lin Dong's eyes, he suddenly turned his head, momentarily stunned. He noticed that Mu Lingshan, standing next to him, was also staring at the silver tower on the auction stage, somewhat lost in thought. "Brother Lin Dong, That thing seems special. Lin Dong couldn't help but twitch slightly at those words, a trace of disbelief flickering deep in his eyes. Could this girl have actually sensed the ancestral talisman fluctuation coming from the silver tower? But how is that possible? She didn't possess an ancestral talisman, so how could she perceive such a unique ripple? Yes, it's definitely unusual. Suppressing the shock within, Lin Dong nodded subtly. He wasn't particularly interested in figuring out how Mu Lingshan had detected the fluctuation right now. What mattered to him was how to get his hands on that silver tower. On the auction stage, Tang Dongling noticed the restless atmosphere bubbling up and couldn't help but smile. Her beautiful eyes fixed on the silver tower in her hand as she announced with a smile. The starting bid for this tower is 30 million profound primordial pills. As soon as that price was mentioned, the uproar in the crowd came to an abrupt halt. Many people slumped back in their seats, visibly disheartened. A price like this wasn't just beyond their reach. Even the wealthiest of the great powers would have to think twice. And this was just the opening bid. By the time the competition was over, who knew how high it could soar? The commotion quieted significantly in the face of such an astounding price. Even the major powers sitting at the front, who were typically calm and composed, now had furrowed brows and serious expressions. Hee, since no one's willing to start, let my evil wind cave heaven set the tone. Xie Yan, his gaze brimming with greed as he stared at the silver tower, licked his lips and was the first to bid with a chuckle, 32 million. If evil wind cave heaven has that much money, why didn't you outbid that young lady earlier? Celestial Monument Sect offers 35 million. A middle-aged man in black robes smirked, his voice laced with mockery. He was from the Celestial Monument Sect of the Northern Mystery Sea, a force just as powerful as evil wind cave heaven. Well, since everyone is in such high spirits, I'll have to join in too. Cosmic Cave Heaven bids 38 million. Zhou Qian, dressed in white and having stayed out of the competition so far, finally smiled and entered the fray. Suspended Void Valley bids 40 million. It started. Lin Dong leaned back in his chair, watching the silent battle unfold before him. His eyes narrowed slightly. Right from the start, the bidding had already left him far behind. Clearly, relying on formal channels meant he had lost any chance to compete with these powerful factions. Don't get involved in this fight. Lin Dong glanced over at Mu Lingshan, who seemed eager to jump in. He immediately shook his head. Why not? Mu Lingshan asked, puzzled. She could tell Lin Dong was just as interested in that small tower as she was. Even if you managed to outbid them, do you think the two of us could safely walk out of here with it? Lin Dong said softly. Mu Lingshan paused, though reluctant. She still nodded. Though she was sometimes mischievous, she wasn't stupid. She understood that with so many pairs of red, greedy eyes watching, even if someone won the auction, taking that silver tower out of here would be a monumental challenge. Not just for them. Even the major powers vying for it up front would face the same danger. The factions that lost weren't likely to let it go without a fight. The auction was just the first round of the battle for this silver tower. Phew. Lin Dong exhaled softly, coldly observing the increasingly heated competition. Since he couldn't obtain the tower through official means, he'd have to resort to more unconventional methods. One way or another, he would get that silver tower. 51 million. 53 million. Lin Dong watched as the various great powers relentlessly drove up the price. By this point, the bidding had reached a fever pitch, and even for these wealthy powers, 50 million wasn't a small sum. When the bidding finally hit 55 million, several factions reluctantly sat down, unwilling to continue. However, judging by their darkened faces, it was clear they had no intention of giving up the silver tower so easily. Everyone understood that winning the auction didn't mean securing the silver tower for good. It was merely the first step. Lin Dong scanned the auction hall. Now, only 3 major powers remained in the bidding war. Evil Wind Cave Heaven, Cosmic Cave Heaven, and Phantom Demon Sect. Clearly, none of them were willing to back down. After a fierce round of bidding, the price finally settled at 61 million, with Evil Wind Cave Heaven emerging as the highest bidder. Brother Xie Yan, you really are bold. Though this silver tower might be linked to the dwelling of a powerful reincarnator, it's not yet fully confirmed. Yet you were still willing to spend such a hefty price. Truly, you have guts. Zhou Qian smirked, giving Xie Yin a casual smile. Thank you for the reminder, Brother Zhou, but I believe it's worth the price, Xie Yin responded with a forced grin. Internally, he was fuming. If it hadn't been for Zhou Qian's bidding near the end, the price wouldn't have skyrocketed like this. Zhou Qian chuckled softly, his tone light. Well, congratulations then, Brother Xie. Though, I do hope you managed to bring it back safely to Evil Wind Cave Heaven. As he said this, Zhou Qian's smile turned slightly strange. At the same time, members of other powerful factions subtly raised their eyebrows, leaning back lazily in their chairs. Their half-lowered eyes flickered with a hint of coldness. Xie Yin was quick to notice these strange looks. He let out a cold laugh, replying, "Let's wait and see." On the auction stage, Tang Dongling, observing the conclusion of the bidding war, gave a radiant smile. Since there are no further bids, this silver tower now belongs to Evil Wind Cave Heaven for a price of 61 million profound primordial pills. A faint murmur rippled through the auction hall. Yet, what stood out was the peculiar expressions on many faces. As their gazes crossed, a deep, hidden greed could be seen flickering in their eyes. Let's go. The auction is over. Lin Dong smiled, glancing at Xie Yin before rising from his seat and turning to Mu Lingshan. MHM, Mu Lingshan nodded. She understood that while the auction had ended, the real excitement was just beginning. Over the next few days, the people from Evil Wind Cave Heaven would likely face some serious headaches. Lin Dong led Mu Lingshan out of the auction hall and headed straight to the Celestial Merchant Pavilion to collect the items he had won. After being escorted by a maid, Lin Dong and Mu Lingshan waited briefly in a private room until Tang Dongling's graceful figure entered their view. Brother Lin, the Earth Core Spirit Essence you auctioned off fetched a total of 12.5 million profound primordial pills. After deducting the price of the Volcanic Flame Essence Stone and the other items you won, this is the remaining amount. Tang Dongling handed over a cosmic bag with a cheerful smile. Everything you bid for is inside, except for that dried corpse. Thank you for the trouble, Miss Tang, Lin Dong nodded. Then he turned to Mu Lingshan, who smiled sweetly at Tang Dongling and said, Sister, were you worried I wouldn't be able to pay for that dried corpse? Tang Dongling was momentarily embarrassed but quickly recovered, her slender fingers gently brushing Mu Lingshan's smooth cheek. That corpse might have been pricey, but not enough to make this sister feel heartache. Worst case, I'd cover it for Brother Lin. Enough teasing. Lin Dong shook his head helplessly. Mu Lingshan giggled, waving her small hand as a cosmic bag appeared, which she handed over to Tang Dongling. Here you go, 20 million profound primordial pills, all inside. Tang Dongling took the bag without much inspection, passing it to the maid beside her. With a wave of her hand, several attendants entered, carefully carrying in a crystal coffin. Lin Dong's gaze locked onto the dried corpse inside the crystal coffin. A flash of excitement crossed his eyes as he stepped forward, gently placing his hand on the coffin's surface. Faintly, he could feel traces of a devouring force emanating from the corpse. Brother Lin, this corpse is quite unusual. Any energy that approaches it seems to vanish in an eerie way. If you plan to do anything with it, be cautious, Tang Dongling warned from the side. Thank you. Lin Dong smiled and nodded. With a flick of his sleeve, the crystal coffin was stored into his cosmic bag. Since the devouring ancestral talisman was within him, he wasn't concerned about the devouring heavenly corpse causing any trouble. Brother Lin seems quite familiar with this corpse. Tang Dongling's eyes flashed with curiosity as she probed lightly. Not really, Lin Dong replied vaguely. Thankfully, the devouring heavenly corpse was so rare that even he wouldn't have known what it was without Yan's help. If the Celestial Merchant Pavilion discovered that they had sold a corpse with the potential to rival a Revolution stage powerhouse for just 20 million, even their pavilion master would probably be livid. Some things were best left unsaid. Seeing Lin Dong's reluctance to elaborate, Tang Dongling let it slide with a smile. She had asked out of curiosity. After all, no matter what methods the Celestial Merchant Pavilion used, they couldn't trace the origin of this corpse. Oh, by the way, Brother Lin, Tang Dongling hesitated briefly before adding, in the next few days, Celestial Merchant City might become a bit chaotic. Lin Dong's eyes gleamed as he considered the situation. The Silver Tower had fallen into the hands of Evil Wind Cave Heaven, but it was clear that the other major factions would not take this lying down. Given their own powerful backgrounds, they wouldn't hesitate to offend Evil Wind Cave Heaven if the opportunity arose. If a chance presented itself, they'd definitely make a move to seize the Silver Tower, and such a confrontation was bound to turn into a bloody conflict. Thank you for the warning, Miss Tang. Since the handover is complete, I'll be on my way now. With a polite smile, Lin Dong cupped his hands to Tang Dongling, and without lingering further, he led Mu Lingshan out under her watchful gaze. As they approached the entrance of the Celestial Merchant Pavilion, they saw a crowd gathering ahead. Among the murmurs and pointing fingers, a group from Evil Wind Cave Heaven strode in, led by none other than Xie Yan. As soon as Xie Yan spotted Lin Dong, a glint of cold malice flickered in his eyes. He approached with a sneer. So, you dare to show your face around here? You've got some nerve. Lin Dong chuckled, his tone laced with mockery. Well, it seems to me that you're the one with problems right now. Let's see if you can actually get that Silver Tower out of the Celestial Merchant region first. Looks like there's going to be quite a show in the next few days. With that, Lin Dong smirked at Xie Yan and walked past him without another word, heading straight out of the pavilion. That bastard, Xie Yan muttered, his face darkening as he watched Lin Dong pass by. His fists clenched tightly, and it was clear that if not for the current situation, he would have already lashed out. Let's go, young cave lord. We need to secure the item and then figure out how to make our escape. Wasting time with this kid won't do us any good, said the elderly man in black beside Xie Yan, his voice low and calm. Xie Yan took a deep breath and nodded. He knew all too well that they were being watched by countless red eyes, and they couldn't afford to let Lin Dong distract them any further. Meanwhile, Lin Dong led Mu Lingshan out of the Celestial Merchant Pavilion. He glanced up at the sky, noting dark clouds gathering ominously in the distance, as if a storm was slowly approaching, bringing with it a faint, unsettling scent of blood. The real show is just beginning, Lin Dong murmured with a light smile, rubbing his hands together. After years of searching, he'd finally found a clue to the second Ancestral Talisman. There was no way he was going to let this chance slip away. Inside a spacious room, Lin Dong retrieved the Sea King Spirit Herb he'd acquired from the auction and tossed it to Mu Lingshan. Here, take this. Use it to deal with the seal on your body. Mu Lingshan eagerly caught the herb, her eyes lighting up with delight. Finally found it. Humph. Once I break this seal, if I run into those Blood Demon Shark Clan jerks again, I'll yank out all their teeth. Lin Dong chuckled. Before that, we've got other matters to attend to. We're going to snatch that guy's Silver Tower, aren't we? Mu Lingshan's eyes sparkled as she leaned closer, visibly excited. That sounds fun. Let's take it and make him furious. Seeing her mischievous enthusiasm, Lin Dong couldn't help but laugh and ruffle her hair. Focus on breaking the seal first. Taking that Silver Tower won't be easy, and we'll need to plan carefully. All right, she said, nodding earnestly. She knew that if she couldn't break the seal, her current strength would only make her a burden to Lin Dong during their plans. Mu Lingshan waved her small hand, and a dark life and death coffin lid appeared, floating in the air. She leapt onto it, and a deep blue light surged from her body. The Sea King Spirit Herb in her hand began to emit a bright green glow. As Mu Lingshan channeled her primordial energy, a flash of crimson appeared on her shoulder. A blood-red shark materialized, its sharp serrated teeth biting down on her shoulder, as if trying to suppress the flow of energy within her. Gritting her teeth, Mu Lingshan formed a series of hand seals. The green light from the Sea King's Spirit Herb quickly flowed into her body, attacking the blood-red shark. The herb's properties seemed especially effective against the seal. Wherever the green light touched, the crimson began to retreat, and the once menacing blood shark grew weak and sluggish. It's working, Lin Dong thought, a hint of relief on his face. It seemed the Sea King's Spirit Herb was indeed effective against Mu Lingshan's seal. With her strength restored, it would greatly aid his future plans. I'll use this time to take control of the devouring heavenly corpse, Lin Dong muttered to himself. With a flick of his sleeve, the heaven-burning cauldron flew out, and he swiftly entered it. Inside the heaven-burning cauldron, the space within now felt far more stable and expansive than before. Faint ripples emanated from 8 distinct positions in the sky above, resembling massive pillars that firmly supported the entirety of this domain. Since obtaining the 8 extremes scorching heaven gate, the heaven-burning cauldron had clearly been strengthened considerably. Lin Dong's gaze swept across the area before he flicked his finger. A crystalline coffin appeared in a flash. Within it stood a pitch-black, mummified corpse, silent and motionless. Lin Dong placed his palm on the coffin, and with a surge of primordial energy, the crystalline coffin instantly disintegrated into dust, leaving the corpse fully exposed before his eyes. His gaze, filled with fervor, carefully studied the mummified figure. The dried, blackened body was covered with claw-like scars, particularly a deep hole about the size of a fist in the back, hinting at the vicious battle it had once endured long ago. Staring at the corpse, Lin Dong pondered for a moment before flicking his finger again. A sharp burst of primordial energy shot forth, striking the body with full force. However, the corpse remained utterly unmoved by the attack. Only when the energy impacted its surface did a faint black glow flicker, effortlessly dissolving Lin Dong's powerful strike. As expected, it's the power of devouring, Lin Dong murmured to himself. He was intimately familiar with this force. The moment his energy made contact, it had been instantly consumed by the corpse. Yin, how do I control it? Lin Dong asked inwardly. Though he was now the master of the devouring ancestral talisman, he clearly had not yet mastered it to the terrifying extent of its previous wielder, the master of devouring. Focus your mind into the devouring ancestral talisman, channel the power of devouring into its body, and then condense a devouring imprint, Yin replied. Nodding slightly at the instructions, Lin Dong extended his hand. Black light gathered on his palm, forming a ring of energy. With a delicate touch, his finger landed on the chest of the mummified corpse. Buzz. The moment Lin Dong's finger made contact with the devouring heavenly corpse, black ripples spread across its surface. But this time, when the ripples met the devouring energy swirling around his fingertip, they were immediately repelled. Hiss. The two forces of devouring intertwined. Lin Dong could feel his consciousness slipping effortlessly into the devouring heavenly corpse through the point of contact. In that instant, Lin Dong's vision suddenly shifted. It felt as though he had been transported into a vast starry sky. Startled by the abrupt change, Lin Dong quickly composed himself, realizing this was likely a spiritual imprint left within the devouring heavenly corpse. Walking through the cosmic expanse, Lin Dong suddenly felt something strange and lifted his head. His pupils contracted as he saw, at the far end of this dimensional space, an enormous black fissure spanning nearly 1,000,000 feet. The crack resembled a massive chasm in the heavens, from which an indescribable aura of malevolent energy poured forth. Whoosh! As the fissure appeared, a figure wrapped in black light suddenly streaked across the distant sky, moving through the void. This figure was surrounded by swirling black holes, constantly forming and dissolving. From afar, he appeared to be the very creator of these dark vortexes. A dimensional rift. A low, rumbling voice echoed from the black-clad figure as he gazed at the massive tear in space. Lin Dong's attention was locked on the figure, and the overwhelming devouring force radiating from him instantly revealed his identity, the master of devouring. Behind him stood another figure, completely motionless. Upon closer inspection, Lin Dong realized it was the devouring heavenly corpse that now belonged to him. I'll see exactly what you creatures are. The master of devouring spoke in a deep, cold tone as he stared at the dimensional rift. Without hesitation, his form transformed into a streak of black light, shooting straight into the fissure. Behind him, the devouring heavenly corpse followed closely. Whoosh! As Lin Dong watched the two figures vanish into the rift, a chill crept over him. His scalp tingled. Beyond that rift lay the lair of the alien demons. The sheer audacity of the Master of Devouring to charge and so fearlessly. Boom, boom. Moments after the Master of Devouring entered the dimensional rift, an earth-shattering wave of energy surged out. The tremors within the dimensional rift persisted for a long time. Then a deafening roar echoed across the skies. Lin Dong seemed to witness a massive palm, tens of thousands of feet in size, flash from within the rift. A terrifying ripple of power surged, and a black beam of light shot out from the rift. It was none other than the Devouring Master, who had charged in earlier. He steadied himself, his dark eyes fixed on the dimensional rift. His expression grew more serious, but without a word, he turned to leave. Whoosh! Just as he was about to depart, a colossal finger, over 1,000 feet long, extended from the rift, pointing toward the sky. A sinister black beam of light tore through space, striking like lightning toward the Devouring Master. Boom! The Devouring Master didn't turn to block the attack. Instead, as the black beam neared him, the devouring heavenly corpse suddenly surged forward, taking the full brunt of the dark beam with its body. Swoosh! The Devouring Master's figure flickered several times, quickly retreating. Meanwhile, the devouring heavenly corpse's black glow dimmed, and it fell powerlessly, plunging into the depths of the ocean below. As the devouring heavenly corpse sank into the deep sea, the vision before Lin Dong's eyes abruptly ended. His mind withdrew from the scene, and he pressed his lips together. It appeared that, in the past, this devouring heavenly corpse had once taken a powerful blow for the Devouring Master, which was why it had been damaged to this extent. These ancient scenes never failed to leave a lingering sense of awe. Lin Dong let out a soft sigh, his finger, still faintly glowing with black light, grazing across the forehead of the devouring heavenly corpse. A black rune appeared on its forehead, slowly fading away. When the rune formed, Lin Dong could clearly sense that the devouring heavenly corpse before him was now under his control. So, I've successfully gained control? Lin Dong smiled as he looked at the devouring heavenly corpse. When the rune had taken shape, he had unmistakably felt a connection form between him and the corpse. His eyes shone with excitement as he stared at the devouring heavenly corpse. With a single thought, its tightly closed eyes suddenly snapped open. In its pitch-black pupils, an ancient, piercing sharpness seemed to flash. Ha! Even with his usual composure, Lin Dong couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight. Controlling the devouring heavenly corpse had been far easier than he had expected. If the Celestial Merchant Pavilion knew that the very thing they had been struggling with for so long had been handled so easily by him, they would no doubt be utterly frustrated. But there was no helping it. After all, Lin Dong was the only one in this world who possessed the devouring Ancestral Talisman. Only the rune formed by the devouring power could stay within the devouring heavenly corpse. Any other type of energy that attempted to enter would simply be devoured without mercy. This devouring heavenly corpse can still be used, but it's in a half-ruined state, a voice said. It was Yin, floating out from within Lin Dong's body. He glanced at the devouring heavenly corpse and added, "If you want to repair it, you'll need to slowly nourish it using the devouring Ancestral Talisman." Lin Dong nodded. He didn't have any grand illusions about restoring the devouring heavenly corpse to its peak strength immediately. Step by step was the only way forward, and just gaining control of it was more than enough for now. Even though it's in a deteriorated state, it would be extremely difficult for anyone at the Death Mystique stage to completely destroy it, Yen remarked. Of course, it's a shame its offensive power has been significantly weakened. Otherwise, it could even slay a Death Mystique stage expert. But as it stands now, it can only deal with those at the perfect completion of the Life Mystique stage, Lin Dong said with a grin. Still, that meant this devouring heavenly corpse possessed defenses on par with a Death Mystique stage expert and offensive strength, rivaling someone at the peak of the Life Mystique stage. That alone made it a formidable force. While it can't kill a Death Mystique stage expert, it's more than capable of holding one off with its defenses, Lin Dong said, laughing. He could already imagine the frustration of those Death Mystique stage experts, trying to fight a nearly indestructible corpse that they couldn't shake off. Yin nodded in agreement. No matter the state of the devouring heavenly corpse, it had been created by the devouring master to battle alien demons in ancient times. Now that the control process was complete, Lin Dong pondered for a moment before closing his hand. The mysterious sea map he had purchased at an auction appeared in his palm. He extended his mental energy, imprinting the map into his mind. After a while, he opened his eyes with a hint of frustration. As expected, the map did indeed depict an unknown sea region, but it wasn't the one Lin Dong needed. It seemed that to find the precise location of the Thunder Ancestral Talisman, he would still need to rely on the Silver Tower. "I'll have to make a move for that thing," Lin Dong muttered. "There are quite a few people heading to the Evil Wind Cave Heaven this time." Judging from the other day, it seems that Xie Yin is accompanied by two individuals who have reached the perfect completion of the life mystique stage. Xie Yin himself is at the pinnacle of the great completion of the life mystique stage, just a step away from perfect completion. This lineup wasn't weak at all. If not for the sheer allure of the Silver Tower, most wouldn't even consider going after them. Unfortunately, life didn't offer that many, if only moments. Lin Dong had a hunch that Xie Yin's group wouldn't stay in Celestial Merchant City for long. Although this place was under the control of the Celestial Merchant Pavilion, and at first, they'd give them some face, in a few days, someone might not be able to resist taking action. When that time came, it would be quite the spectacle. Thinking of this, a slight smirk appeared on Lin Dong's lips, tinged with a bit of schadenfreude. In the following days, though the Celestial Merchant auction had concluded, the city's energy didn't fade much. Many powerful figures still lingered, and as they stayed, their eyes all inevitably focused on the same spot, the resting place of the Evil Wind Cave Heaven group. It was clear that many in the city coveted that Silver Tower in Evil Wind Cave Heaven's possession. While most knew their own limits, Celestial Merchant City was now like a den of wolves, and Evil Wind Cave Heaven was the pack of lions dragging around prey. Though the lions' power was formidable, in this situation, they appeared to be at a disadvantage. Xie Yin and his group had clearly sensed this as well. To their credit, they had a few tricks up their sleeves. In just a day, they had spent a fortune to hire several powerful guards in Celestial Merchant City, aiming to fight wolves with wolves. But the major factions still lingering in the city merely watched coldly. These temporary mercenaries would be of little use when things truly came to a head, and who could say if any of them might harbor plans to turn against Evil Wind Cave Heaven when the time was right. Such treachery could easily throw them into disarray. On a high balcony in one of the city's pavilions, Lin Dong sat lazily at the edge, his gaze drifting toward the northwest. With a soft chuckle, he murmured, "They should be making their move soon, right?" Just as he finished speaking, in the depths of the courtyard in that very direction, Xie Yin stood up slowly, his face cold and sinister. He scanned the room full of Evil Wind Cave Heaven's top fighters before his gaze lingered on a frail figure in the corner. "Well then, follow the plan. We leave the city this afternoon." Afternoon arrived quickly, and as the sun began its descent, Lin Dong, who had been sitting on the pavilion, suddenly sensed a shift. The atmosphere of the city stirred, a subtle ripple passing through. "Can't hold back anymore, huh?" Sensing the change, Lin Dong smiled faintly and lifted his head. From the northwest, the sound of wind being torn apart filled the air. Hundreds of figures shot out from that shadowy courtyard, surging toward the outskirts of the city like a tide. Standing on the pavilion, Lin Dong rose to his feet, his eyes cutting through the chaotic scene below, focusing on three distinct areas. The auras in those places were particularly strong. It was clear they were the main forces of Evil Wind Cave Heaven. "So, they're scattering to confuse everyone, huh?" Lin Dong raised an eyebrow. He could see the various major factions, who had been keeping a close eye on Evil Wind Cave Heaven, also spring into action, chasing after those three strongest groups. "The Silver Tower isn't with them. They're just decoys," Yan's voice echoed at this moment. Lin Dong grinned. Xie Yin likely hadn't anticipated that Yin had already locked onto the Silver Tower's unique energy during the auction. Any trickery they tried now was useless. "Let's see how long you think you can hide," Lin Dong muttered, arms crossed, his eyes gleaming with amusement. Celestial Merchant City was now in chaos. Countless powerful figures swarmed through the skies like locusts, chasing after the evil wind cave heaven group that had fled the city. Even many of the large factions were following the three groups with the strongest auras. After about half an hour, the city finally calmed down somewhat. The Silver Tower is heading north. Yan's voice suddenly came again. Lin Dong's grin widened, and with a sharp whistle, he launched himself toward the northern part of the city. As his figure sped through the air, a petite figure swiftly followed behind him. Beneath the setting sun, Lin Dong soared like a great rock across the sky, his sharp eyes fixed on the source of the energy fluctuations.